All we need is a place to be and a few good friends for some company. If you'd like to stay, you don't have to leave. We'll leave the lights on and the door unlocked. If you drop on by, you don't have to knock. We're happy to share whatever we've got.
Hi, I'm Clay, and this is Yarn About You, a podcast where I get to chat with people I know and love, as well as people I'd just like to meet and hear their story. Yarn About You would like to pay respect to the traditional owners of the land in which this podcast is recorded and acknowledge the elders, past, present and emerging, for their contribution and wealth of knowledge that they pass on from generation to generation. Today's guest is Ivan King. Ivan's an Australian entertainment legend and veteran performer in hundreds of plays, revues, musicals and operettas, as well as countless other theatrical events. He's toured Australia and New Zealand, as well as worked in the UK. Over the decades, particularly in Perth, his hometown in Western Australia, he's played a wide range of roles at the Playhouse, the Regal Theatre, the Hayman Theatre, the Hole in the Wall, His Majesty's Theatre and many more. He's a talented writer, having published articles for various newsletters, newspapers and magazines, and he's also written and edited countless scripts. Ivan's also the founder of the Museum of Performing Arts, which is located downstairs at His Majesty's Theatre in the Perth City. There, he's created a multitude of exhibitions over the years, highlighting and celebrating the history of entertainment and the incredible people who made it happen in Western Australia. In 2009, he was given the Premier's Award for Active Citizenship, and in 2016 he deservedly received a Medal of the Order of Australia for his service in the performing arts as an historian and archivist. I was incredibly lucky to sit down for a yarn with Ivan at His Majesty's Theatre, where I also had a personal guided tour. I hope you enjoy our yarn. Ivan King, welcome to Yarn About You.
Yarn about me, is it?
It is all about you today.
Not yarn event, yarn about me.
No, yarn is another day.
For a crack to start off with. It only goes downhill from here.
Beautiful.
I love listening to myself here with these phones. May I start with a story about microphones?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, about 3 years ago, I did Mr. Salisbury in Oliver.
Oh, okay.
For an amateur group here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the theatre, the group was amateur, but it was the auditorium of St Hilda's, which is the school for young ladies down in Peppermint Grove way.
Mm-hmm.
See all of that. But the point was, I hadn't done Oliver for 30 years. I hadn't been on stage for 30 years, and a friend of mine was playing it. Fagin, and he said, why not come and repeat your huge success from the Playhouse in the early 80s? And I thought, oh, why not? So I went there, and I'm glad I did, really, because I had never used body mics.
Oh, really?
And they had body mics down there, you see, and I fell in love with the sound of my own voice. The first dress rehearsal was an absolute disaster because there's the poor conductor sawing away down in the pit, and I'm taking absolutely no notice of him, and I'm listening to my voice all over the place like this. Or did I get notes afterwards? But I'm so glad I did in a way, but very, very proud of the fact that when I was on the stage, I never used microphones.
Yeah.
Projected.
Yeah, you can always tell a good theatre actor when they don't need to use microphones.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, I always start my podcast because I love to know about where people come from. So tell me about your family. Tell me about your parents. Where did you come from?
Well, I'm what they call a genuine sandgroper. 4 generations back. I was born in Midland Junction, as it was called then. It's now just plain Midland. As we say, in the shadow of the Midland Town Hall clock. That's where I was born. My mother is and was a national treasure to everybody who knew her. She was a wonderful, fabulous, warm woman who never reached her potential outside of the family because she didn't have a formal education. but she was the housewife and then she was the dressmaker. That was her profession. She made fabulous clothes for generations of the family. She went out a few years ago at the age of 98 and a half, and I still miss her. In fact, I've got her chains around my neck. They never leave my neck. This is how I remember my mum. And my father was a bushwhacking family up in the Gingin, which is about 60, 70 k's up beyond Midland. And Mum said that he had a brilliant mind, could read a book a night and remember it, but again, he had no education. And as a result of the frustration of having no education and the post-war world around him, he died an old man of 47. So I went into local amateur theatre here and eventually went to Melbourne, where I got a gig within 2 weeks in the Princess Theatre in Auntie Mame and toured with that production for nearly a year, then came back here and did more work and went back east. And the big one was The Merry Widow with June Bronhill.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the Sadler's Wells Merry Widow. And I toured with that for about 18 months with June Bronhill and with Suzanne Steele, Australia and New Zealand. So the memories of Bronhill, what an artist she was at the beginning. Her diction was perfection, absolute perfection. But I don't think she valued, or she didn't nurture the gifts that she had to me. She would throw these parties in the flat in South Yarra. Everybody would turn up, and her gimmick was to have the bath full of bottles of champagne. Now, for a boy from Midland, that was indeed the cutting edge. The cutting edge of the highest levels of sophistication. I always remember those bathtubs full of bottles of champagne. And she would have paid for it, by the way. I don't think some of the guests did.
I'm sure she would have had a lot of friends who showed up.
Yes. A memory which for me will never leave is she was at a party in an apartment overlooking the botanical gardens in Melbourne. It was a steamy hot night, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and she was shickered. And we were out on the balcony. She was inside, and the piano started playing. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, you heard this silver thread of a voice, sotto voce, singing "Summertime." And it just floated out over the balcony to the gardens. And that is an imperishable memory for me. I cannot listen to anybody else sing "Summertime" now, but it's always Bronhill.
Oh, the memories
Yes.
you must have.
Yes, yeah. And we took the Merry Widow to Brisbane, and we stayed at In Surfers Paradise, and driving backwards and forwards. That, of course, was before the Paradise we know now. I think we were in an apartment, or she was, on the first floor of a garage that had been owned by, as I recall, the radio personality of the time, Jack Davey. And we drove backwards and forwards to do the show. We had a dreadful accident one night going up there for the show, and we car blocked the highway at about 6 o'clock at night.
Oh, no.
And I missed the performance that night. And the child star of British films, John Howard Davies, he went on for me.
Wow.
And it boosted his career, wasn't it? Because he went back and he ended up directing Fawlty Towers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I could go off in all directions here.
Well,
but
that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
so
yes,
that's that's wonderful. But where did your passion first come, or when did you realise that you wanted to be a performer?
I don't know, because I just hated school. It's the old story.
Mhm.
I was so bored with school, and teachers didn't know how to handle me. As they didn't know, they had this arty type.
Mhm.
I was very good at running, sprinting, but I couldn't have cared less. I couldn't remember how to set up the blocks. In fact, the teachers had to come and set the blocks for me. I won one medal, and that was the end of my athletic career. And so it was just there. I can remember being taken to a pantomime in an old vaudeville house when I was about 5 or 6. And God, the theatre itself, the local Luxor, it was an absolute flea pit, as it turned out, I read later. But sitting there watching this pantomime and saying that's what I want to do. I went from there. I mean, the fact that I can remember that.
Lit the flame.
Yeah. And my grandfather was the cleaner at the local picture theatre, as they say. And as about a 5 or 6 year old, I used to go and help him, as that's 5 or 6 year old does, in the way of helping. Every Sunday morning, help him clean up the theatre from the previous night's performance. And I was fascinated by the curtains in the theatre. I used to get into the wings and I'd open and close that curtains. In fact, that was the first time I heard that immortal expression, "Will you get off that bloody stage?" And here in 2000 anyway, we were celebrating the centenary of cinema in this theatre, because on this very corner, Perth saw its first moving pictures, you see. We celebrated the centenary of cinema here. And Bill Kerr, he unveiled a plaque, and I said a few words, and I said one of the imperishable memories from my childhood is every Sunday morning my grandfather climbing up and down stairs to the bio box a dozen or so times, lugging these huge heavy cans of films downstairs to be collected by the distributor on Monday morning. And I said, if he could come back now and tell him that he could carry Gone with the Wind home in his pocket.
Oh, yes.
He wouldn't believe you. So that's a part of my childhood. Another memory of Bronhill, we were playing Newcastle, New South Wales, in that theatre that's just been restored. I think it was called the Victoria.
The Civic? Is it the Civic
No,
Theatre in Newcastle?
No, in Newcastle, yes. Was it the Victoria Theatre?
I'm not too sure.
But anyway, it's just been refurbished, I'm delighted to say. And Miss Bronhill, it was still industrial then, so she decided the voice needed to be protected. So we stayed on a farm about 30 miles, as they were then, outside of Newcastle. And this particular morning, we were sitting out on the back veranda of the farmhouse having our breakfast and she was in her pyjamas, in a baby doll pyjamas, and a telegram arrived. A telegram, would you believe? Remember those? And it was from London, asking if she would be interested in appearing in a musical version of the play, The Barretts of Wimpole Street. And she said, "What the bloody hell's that?" I said, "I know, I've done the play. I played one of the sons in a theatre, amateur theatre, just across the way there." So I explained the whole plot of it to her while she was still with the telegram in her hand. And she said, "Thank you very much." She flew off to London, had her name up in lights in the West End for 14 months. I flew back to a Melbourne winter and took a job in the local railway yards, the good yards, for 6 months. So somebody went ahead there.
The glamour of show business.
The glamour of showbiz, yes.
I always talk about, I filmed a television series over here in Perth and in Paris, and flying business class and having interviews with everybody and then coming back and working in a carpet warehouse the very next day.
Yeah, that'd be right.
That's life. You're only as good as your next job.
Yes, exactly. Then I went, as you had to, London in the broader sense. I spent far more time in the provinces than I did in London in my 2 years there. In fact, I became a member. Well, my first gig was at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden.
So how old were you when you went over there for 2 years?
Yes, I was about in my mid-20s.
Okay.
And at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, as I tell everybody, pause, and they say, as an usher. It was a name dropper's paradise. The first thing I did was pinch some of the stationery and
beautiful.
ride home. And then I got my first acting job, which was at a Butlins holiday camp in Yorkshire Filey.
Okay.
So I was at the Royal Opera House Saturday night and Butlins holiday camp on Sunday. We did, right through the summer season, we did 5 plays a fortnight, once you got into the swing of things, doing twice nightly. And you weren't allowed to be very self-indulgent with your pauses. They almost had a stopwatch on you, because the longer they were watching you, the less time the punters were spending at the bar.
Oh, okay.
And I did several tours of the provinces, a series of comedies, classics like Stop It Nurse or Widow's Paradise. And the one that I did appreciate was Sleeping Beauty, the pantomime I played the witch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Wicked Witch. And in the Arts Theatre Cambridge over Christmas. So that was my complete English experience. But I wasn't earning any money, you know? And I thought of the sunshine back here. Anyway, I came back from one of those tours. I know the underside of the British theatre scene, this British showbiz scene, and it ain't pretty when you're at the mercy of digs, as they used to be called. I don't know what the situation is there now, but the food was atrocious. The conditions under which you work were atrocious. And everybody talks about the West End, but I saw the Butlins holiday camp side of things. I mean, I have a million stories there to tell. And it wasn't very pretty. But I'd come back from one of those tours, and I was in Sloane Square one evening, and I literally bumped into a theatre manager from Perth. What are you doing? And I said, well, I've just come back from this tour, blah, blah, blah. And I want to go home. He said, well, come and work for us. So I came home and spent 2 years in Theatre Restaurant. With Joan Sidney. Remember Joan Sidney?
Yes.
Yes, she was Diamond Lil.
Oh, okay.
And I was the sexy sheriff, and Theatre Restaurant was a Wild West saloon. And that settled me back into Western Australia. Then came a huge array and range of plays and comedies and dramas and musicals. In fact, I was doing 5 and 6 plays a year. When you tell people that today, today's actors, they don't believe you. But we were just one after the other. So I set a huge range. But I was starting to develop an interest in my own city's history. And I found out that it had been taken care of by other museums and so forth. But no one had really concentrated on the history of show business entertainment here in the West. It was the time when the Performing Arts Museum in Melbourne was starting up. And I was at I worked backstage for the opening of the Sydney Opera House in 1973. Name dropper's paradise that was. You know, I was there for 6 weeks beforehand and about 6 weeks afterwards.
It opened in October 1973, which is I was born in October 1973. That's how I know.
Right.
But
yes.
yeah, it's an amazing experience. That would have
yes,
been.
it was. It was.
Because
Truly.
it was opened by the Queen,
Yes,
wasn't it?
yes. I was sitting in the green room one afternoon holding court, and we heard rustle, rustle, blah, 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 blah. I looked behind me, and it's the Queen standing.
Wow.
She was passing from one theatre through to the other.
Mm.
Oh, dear. But I digress.
Did you ask to see her ticket? No? Yeah, I'm good.
So I've done both opera houses, the Royal Opera House and the Sydney Opera House, and hadn't sung a note in either.
Wow.
And the opening exhibition in the Opera House was a history of theatre, a huge display of memorabilia from Sydney's theatrical heritage, and that sort of inspired me to do the same over here.
Mm.
And I started collecting material, and the only space I had in my small flat was under my bed. So that's where the Museum of Performing Arts in Perth began, under my bed.
Wow.
And we're now got about 50,000, 60,000 items.
Here in His Majesty's Theatre?
No, it's stored down the road here.
Okay.
You're right. And it's just ready now to be properly housed and curated. It's all there in its envelopes and its boxes, and we're having it digitized at the moment as well. But I'm now just slowly wafting into the wings, ready for somebody else to take over. And it has to happen soon.
Mm.
I do get a bit frustrated, quite frankly, because the work that's being done now should have been done 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I get quite more than frustrated. I get very cantankerous about the situation. But it's all there. I've written all the didactics. The material is there for another generation to interpret and revisit.
Because Perth has always been such a creative place. And for a long time, a lot of the big artists didn't come over to the West, did they? So Perth kind of created its own. They had
yes.
its own
there was
talent
a
pool.
repertory club here from the 20s through the 30s to the 40s, leading up to the opening of the Playhouse in 56. That was the main. That was the cultural hub, because it had all the better class of person involved, all the social leaders and society leaders, and they did these heavy, God knows what the standard was like, but when you see the programs and the photographs, they tackled the whole range at plays that wouldn't have otherwise been seen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm really sad that the Playhouse is gone now. Demolished.
Yes.
It's apartments now, isn't it?
No, it was church land.
Okay.
A church land, and there is a office block there. But what is rather lovely, where the stage door was, immediately beside it is a mock Gothic sculpture leading into the Cathedral Music School, a school that presents the most sublimely beautiful music. So right beside where the stage door was. So I think there's a continuity there. I love the idea.
And you were talking earlier on about St. George's Cathedral.
Oh, yes, because it's just before he left, the dean at the time, I think it was John Shepley, I think his name was, he said he wanted to create in St. George's Cathedral a corner. He said he wanted to create in the cathedral Perth's equivalent of Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. And we thought at the time, oh yes, a corner, it's going to be that dusty little space right down the end. But no, you go in the main entrance of the cathedral, and immediately on your right, there's this lovely huge board with, sadly, so many names on it that I remember and have worked with. And you think of a memorial board as a la RSL, Jarrah, with gold plate in the names, but no, each name has a special metal plaque. And each year at a ceremony, the latest crop of names are taken down the aisle of the church, blessed, and then put on the board. I was asked in recent times to take a special name down to be blessed, and it was Lionel Logue, the speech and drama teacher who cured King George VI of his stutter and who is featured in the film The King's Speech. His name is there because before he left Perth, he was married in the cathedral. And that leads to another story. A few years ago, must be about 15 years by now. Time flies, you may have noticed. I had this stack of programs from performances, readings, musicals, all kinds of events taking place here, done by, produced by, presented by a speech and drama teacher who had his headquarters up in Barrack Street, and he ran the School of the Spoken Word. I've got the stationery, the School of the Spoken Word. Well, I thought I really must put these out on display sometime. So downstairs, I did an exhibition about this speech and drama teacher, totally oblivious to the fact that that month, on the other side of the world, they were about to release a film called The King's Speech. And, of course, it was Lionel Logue. I received a phone call from an English film studio asking if we had anything relating to Lionel Logue's years in Perth. And I said, funny you should say that. So wow. Images of my display of those programs ended up in the documentary.
Wow.
Very pleased about that.
That's wonderful. So all of your work is it's coming to fruition.
Oh, I didn't get a bonus. An elephant stamp, but no bonus. I think I should tell you my favourite story, actually.
I would love to hear your favourite story.
Right. Now, 1921, I think it was February 2021, a ship pulled in to Fremantle for a 9-hour stopover on the way back to London. One of the passengers got off, caught the train up to Perth here, and stood centre stage of His Majesty's Theatre and delivered a lunchtime lecture on spiritualism to an audience comprised mainly of grieving women who, in a desperate attempt to contact the loved ones they had lost in the First World War, had turned to spiritualism. And apparently that afternoon, the auditorium was absolutely crackling with spiritualism. And that lunchtime lecturer was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow. Okay. Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes, yes. So just before COVID struck, a friend in Queensland's writing a book on the Australian musical. He contacted me because he wanted some photographs from Brand New Day, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew where they were. There's a box up on the shelf. Got the box down, got the envelope stacked one beside the other. Got out the required photographs, said I'll have those zapped off to Brisbane this afternoon. And I was about to put the envelope back in the box, and there was another one in there. I basically knew what was in it, but it was clippings, memorabilia, ephemera, flyers, and so forth, relating to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's visit to Perth to His Majesty's in 1921, you see. And I know what I must do with this. I must put it out on display again sometime. I read it up and said, yeah. And there's a piece on the stage version of Sherlock Holmes as well. And so I put it back in the box, put the box back on the shelf, went upstairs to get a cup of coffee. There was a tap on my shoulder. It was one of our lady volunteers. She said, "Ivan, there's a gentleman downstairs. He wants to see you." He said, you won't know him because he's just stepped off the plane from Sydney, but he's the Australasian president of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle Society, and he wants to know if you've got anything about Sir Arthur's visit to Perth in 1921.
Wow.
That happened within a 15-minute time frame.
Wow.
I went downstairs, quaking, of course, very cold day, but there was this fella absolutely perspiring. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I've got another story. Before I went overseas and became a star of Butler's holiday camp, we toured with Theatre for Young People through the back blocks of New South Wales, and I mean, we went way out. And Judy Nunn, before it reached the stage where no airport bookshop is complete without a stack of her latest novel holding up the roof, And anyway, we were in Galargambone, I think. No, is Galargambone the Festival of Warrumbungles? You're a New South Welshman, you should know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But anyway, we're in the local bloodhouse at the time, and we were doing the children's plays, and she said, the breakfast waitress, lovely lady, came up and said, "Oh, are you here with the school plays, are you?" She said, yes. She said, "Oh, a group came through last year. My daughter took me along. What was it? Oh, they were very entertaining. What do they do now? Selections from Hamlet, Midsummer Night's Dream, and Sherlock Holmes." It was worth going there just to see the look on Judy Nunn's face. Yeah.
So when did you first become involved with His Majesty's Theatre? What was your first memory of that?
Well, I also compare Morning Melodies here. And there was one of them earlier this year. I had a private little inner celebration, marked 50 years since I first stepped on that stage, you see. And I was doing one of the Fat Cat in Double Trouble. That was it. That was when I first stepped on the stage here. But came the time of the refurbishment of the theatre, and this was when I was starting out the collection, of course. It closed 1978 and reopened 28th of May 1980. And when 2 days before it finally closed, I literally climbed into the basement and rescued some photographs and posters that was on their way to the tip. They're now safely saved in the collection. So in other words, from about 1978 onwards, and come the gala opening night in May 1980, I had a small display of memorabilia in the foyers. So that's officially where it started. Actually, the gala opening concert, the reopening concert, there was the local Gilbert and Sullivan Society, the Opera Company, and the ballet, and the actors. I wrote a 20-minute review for the actors to perform, and songs and sketches, which I had already done for the theatre restaurant, so I knew my onions by that stage.
Yeah.
And there was a poem done there called In Praise of Daglish, which doesn't mean much to you because Daglish is a certain suburb in Perth. And I wrote a poem about the glories of suburbia, and it served me well. In fact, I recited it at a function here only 3 weeks before Christmas. So that's a rather convoluted way of saying my connection with the theatre goes back to 1980. I've had the longest run of them all.
Beautiful. So do you know how many performances you've been involved with? Countless.
Countless.
Yeah.
Countless.
What
I do too is, and I'm very proud of this, when the theatre was being reopened, the only remaining Edwardian theatre in the country, blah, 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 except for the Doris Fitton's place in North Sydney. That's also Edwardian, but we ignore that.
Okay, yeah.
We have to have our exclusivity. And I was always being asked to go and say a few words at this club or say a few words at that lunch and that. And I thought, I'd never get any work done, particularly when you go out to the suburbs and you're up on the stage there, pouring your heart out, and they're sitting there asleep, some of them. So we decided that instead of my going to them, they come to me, and we set up a situation where the clubs, the various clubs around town, they make a booking and come in, and I spend 2 hours talking to them.
It's a great idea.
And these, particularly the retirees, they're taken out of their comfort zone. I tell them the yarns, which have far more colour and meaning when you're telling them within the setting. And they have the cup of tea, and then they go home again, and they pay. And I've been doing that for over 26, 27 years, these tours. And I'm proud to say I've never used a microphone.
Wonderful. Wow.
I keep getting stories to add to it, of course.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yeah. And I can name drop for all I would.
Yeah. Go on, name some. Who's been your favourite performers here at His Majesty's?
Well, Angela Lansbury, when she came here, she came down and she went around, met everybody. I was downstairs in my little office downstairs on a table from Dirty Dick's restaurant. That's my workbench,
Okay.
We like to think Judy Davis sat on it. Well, that was her first gig,
Okay, Dirty Dick's.
Dirty Dick's restaurant in Perth. So I'd like to think that she sort of touched her or sat on it or danced on it when she was a serving wench. I think she lasted about 9 weeks in that job. And I looked up from this bench and there was Angela Lansbury. That's gorgeous. That's the other thing. Down near the 4-star dressing rooms, on the walls around it, we've got our Wall of Fame. We've got Debbie Reynolds and we've got Catherine Hepburn and we've got Robert Helpman and we've got Maggie Smith and Geoffrey Rush, Angela Lansbury. And a dancer came in recently and said to me, am I going to get my photo up there? I said, if you've won an Oscar, it would help. Is it? But that is my power, my local power. I decide who goes on that wall. And I'm ruthless.
And you talked about the 4 dressing rooms.
Yes.
There's one
There's Jill Perryman. There's a Jill Perryman.
Beautiful Jill Perryman. I was lucky enough to work with Jill.
Yes. The Jill Perryman room. There is the Lucette Aldous room. There is the Eileen Joyce, who was a great concert pianist from Perth in the 30s. And she won an Eisteddfod here in 1926, which set her on the road to international fame. And more recently, the Tim Minchin room.
Oh.
He was perfect in Amadeus here as Mozart. And as I tell in my tour on the last night, I can see his packed bags outside the dressing room. He finished the show, got changed. There's a taxi waiting for him, whisked him off to the airport where he went off to London to put a few finishing touches to something called Matilda. And we celebrated that occasion with by naming number 3 dressing room after him.
Wonderful.
Upstairs, number 8 is Kate Blanchett, because she didn't want to have the isolated splendour of the Jill Perryman room downstairs. She wanted to be up on the mezzanine where all the action was.
Mm,
We celebrate the history of this venue.
absolutely.
And
It's an
when
amazing
when
venue.
people come in, we say, well, you write your own chapter now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just a spectacular place to be
Yes.
here.
You mentioned Kevin Johnson.
Mm.
Dear Kevin, I've got his dancing shoes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He tells, because one of the features of the place and one of the stories that kids absolutely adore is the fact that the roof used to slide open on hot nights.
Oh, wow.
You see, it wasn't air conditioned until the refurbishment. Vivian Lee said she'd never been so hot as when she entertained the troops in Africa during the Second World War. But Kevin, post-war, he was doing a musical here with a local group, apparently, and he said that on the last matinee, as they came down for their curtain calls, everybody had a balloon, which they released. The balloon floated up to the ceiling, and at a time they opened the roof, the balloons floated out, the idea being that when those balloons floated down to earth again outside and somebody picked up the balloon, attached was 2 complimentary tickets to the next show.
Oh, wow. What a wonderful idea. Wow. Like I said earlier on to you, before we started recording, I was lucky enough to work with Jill Perryman and Kevin Johnston, and I found them to be so lovely, so down to earth, so professional, somebody who's done more work than most of the people on the set at the time, but you would never have known it. They were just such lovely people, and I'll never forget their generosity and their love.
You know that she was referred to as the Perry person, did you?
No.
Yeah, because we hated her having a sexist surname. I did Annie with her. And we did Morning Melodies when we recreated one of those Lux radio broadcast dramas, you know. They were queuing around the block to get in that morning.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the last time I worked with her. She often pops in for coffee. I'm delighted to say.
Yeah, and please give her my love. Like I said, I've got nothing but wonderful memories of both of them. Yeah. So, and on the show that I did with Jill, Clowning Around, it was a television series. Yeah. We had Van Johnson, an old American actor, MGM actor, come out. Now, I know he was very close with Angela Lansbury and always spoke about what a wonderful lady she was. She's one I would have loved to have sat down with.
Yes. The old MGM musicals, of course, we had Debbie Reynolds here.
Yeah.
She was in a concert version of Irene.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and she donated 2 pairs of shoes to our theatre museum, which I put on display here in an exhibition called On Your Toes.
Wow.
And
she's another one. A couple of my friends have met her over the years and have nothing but lovely things to say about.
Yeah, yes.
She really gave people time.
Yes. And 2 more. I think we've had a total of 9 Oscar winners here. And back in the olden days of the America's Cup, we had Claudette Colbert, who won the Oscar for It Happened One Night in 1932, I think, and Rex Harrison.
Oh, wow.
The 2 of them in the one show.
Wow.
And Claudette Colbert, travelled everywhere with her own peach-coloured lampshades.
Oh, really?
Yes. The Parmelia Hotel is just around the corner, about 2 minutes away, and that was their hotel at the time. A Rolls Royce would pick them up from the hotel, bring them around the corner, and deposit them at the stage door, and it would be at the stage door after the performance to take them back again.
Wow.
That's style, isn't it?
That is style.
That's style, yeah.
That's glamour.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
And yes, that's style. There's a story I'm tempted to tell you, but I'm not allowed to.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Great.
I have to save it for
I'll
the
stop
memoirs.
this later on and we'll get back to that one.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest production that you've had on here? That you would...
The biggest physically, that was the South Pacific of about 15, nearly 20 years. No, more than that now, 20 years ago. The big revival,
Okay.
Adelaide Festival Centre. It was huge, and the walls were literally bulging, you know.
Wow.
We've had half a World War II bomber taking off and going up into the flies. That would be physically the biggest show we've ever done. There's another one we did, an opera version of the Batavia shipwreck,
Yeah.
Opera Australia, and part of the set we had to take the side street to take some of the scene out onto the footpath before we could bring it back in again.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's nothing like getting a production on stage when everything comes together. The production team, the cast, the music, the sound, the feel. If you can make somebody feel something, whether it's good, bad, anything, then that's good theatre. What do you think is the most emotional or most impactful piece of theatre that you've seen? Is there any that stand to mind?
No, but I'll go sideways from there and say Maggie Smith, when she was here, just doing that talking head thing, she had the ability to reduce a 1,600-seat theatre into the most intimate little drawing room situation. You felt that wherever you sat there wasn't a cheap seat in the house. She was reaching you. That's technique. And the character she played was very, very sad, of course.
There's certainly a skill when it comes to an old style performer.
Oh, that's playing big. Playing big. I loved playing big.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my motto is play it big or stay in bed.
Yeah.
I get so frustrated with performers who are so real.
Yeah.
They're disappearing.
Yeah.
You know, I say they're playing here, so many of them, as though the television camera's right there.
Yeah.
I'm in the dressing room, ooh, I'm up here.
Mm.
You know, but to be able to play big and expansive, you know, embrace the house. When I first went to Sydney, this was obviously Auntie Mame, a little boy from Midland. We were up in the Cross one night. And at one of the hasty tasties, you know, about 1 o'clock in the morning, a couple of the old-time vaudevillians, the voices are just about gone because they'd spent their lives with working without microphones, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the tricks they used to play. And that one of them said, she said, darling, she said, always pretend that there's a bowl of water in front of you and you dip your fingers into the bowl of water and you take them out and you go flick, flick. She said, that way your hands automatically are graceful. She said, particularly when you're introducing somebody like this, and they're not just like stiff wood, you know, and things like that. That's the other thing I met so many of the old vaudeville performers. Were absolutely hopeless on television because they were still playing to the back row of the gallery.
Yeah. Oh, there's certainly a difference in doing that, and it's quite difficult for people to go from one to another.
Yeah.
These days, we're really lucky in Australia. We've got a lot of them who can transfer from stage to theatre or to stage to film. But yeah, just that. For me, it's always been very easy. A good friend of mine's a director, Andrew Thompson, and he always says, you know, you have to fill the room. And for me, it's always been really easy to fill the room. You want the person in the back row to hear you. But for some people, it's really difficult. And yeah, like you, I'm really frustrated with that.
Yeah, playing small.
Oh, there's nothing worse than when you're in a theatre and you can't hear what they're saying.
Oh, it's I've got no time for it. I get very, very bloody impatient, you know. It should be part of the training. To you know, pat myself on my very talented back. As I said, I speak for 2 hours in my tours here, and I don't use a microphone. Bearing in mind that they're an age group that have faulty hearing to start with. That's another thing about hearing. When my darling mum in care for a while. The people from all over the world now caring for them. And my mum, whose hearing was starting to be very faulty, she said, "What do they say?" She said, and you realise that she'd had to adjust her ears to 5 or 6 different accents before breakfast. And to continue that line, we were having dinner here with Barry Humphries. Sat with him for an hour, and I mentioned I had just seen the revival of Sandy Stone, and I said, that's something about Sandy and care that was never mentioned, is the carers and accents and the hearing. And he said, I will take a note of that. He said that diplomatically, but the art and real life crossed over for me on that occasion. And speaking of Barry Humphries, we've got 2 of his costumes, 2 of his most tasteful frocks in our collection.
Edna frocks?
Edna frocks, yes. But you're sitting there as close as I am to you now, across the table for over an hour. There wasn't a flicker or an inflection to say that was Dame Edna sitting opposite me. It's like an old-fashioned school board where you just wipe everything off.
He's I am a great fan of Barry Humphries, and I was lucky enough to meet him through a friend of mine a couple of years before he passed away. He was touring Edna up in Newcastle, and we got to meet him backstage, which was just amazing for me. And I don't get starstruck too often, but he's just an enigma. Edna was a person. Edna was a separate person, and to be able to create that, and Sir Les, just amazing.
A strange story. There's a lady in Adelaide who is a great friend of his, and I know she herself told me this. It was the last night of one of his seasons there. And she arranged to pick him up to take him for supper after the show. She arrived at the stage door, and there was Barry Humphries with a huge bunch of leftover gladdies that had not been thrown out into the auditorium. So he put the gladdies in the boot of the car, got in, and she was ready to take off. He said, "Oh, well, let's go and find Percy Granger's grave." She said, "What?" So anyway, she went out to the cemetery where Percy Granger's buried, and eventually they found it. He went to the car, got out this great big bunch of gladdies, dumped them on Percy Granger's grave, and said, "Right, let's go and have supper." What do you say to that? You see, I might be stuck over here in the West, but I get all the stories.
Oh, absolutely! It's wonderful. I could sit here and talk all day. It's such a fascinating life that we have in the entertainment industry. We get to meet so many people and so many fleeting moments with such creative people.
I tell you, and this covers the waterfront, music, wartime, and I told it in my preamble for the morning melodies earlier. They give me 7 minutes, and I said, "Darling," I said, "my pauses last 7 minutes." But a few years ago, I did an exhibition on Perth ballrooms called Having a Ball. You see, it was part of the Winter Arts Festival, and it was on a particular ballroom, the Embassy here. But as part of it, I included, and I did a little bit of study on it, down on Cottesloe Beach, there is the Lido, what was called the Lido Cabaret. That was another dance hall, you see. And I did the display there. Now, I was talking about it to Michael Loney, and he told me this story. We did a play at the Playhouse called The Shadow of the Eagle, in which it was about the imagined meeting between John Curtin and General Douglas MacArthur.
Oh, okay.
And Michael played MacArthur beautifully, I might add. After the season there, the Playhouse, they did a brief tour of the eastern states, and they were flying into Canberra and for performances, and Michael got talking to the old gentleman beside him, and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm from Perth, and I'm doing this play about Douglas MacArthur." And this gentleman said, "Oh, that's very interesting." He said, "I was in Perth during the war." And proceeded to tell him his story. He'd come from a white Russian family. Just before, in the late 30s, they escaped Russia and went to Japan. And he spent his childhood in Tokyo, where he learnt to speak fluent Japanese. You see, come the outbreak of war, they escaped and came here to Perth. Now, the authorities weren't very happy at all about having these foreigners in our midst, but hey, here was the fellow who could speak Japanese, very handy if you're at war with the Japanese. So they put him into intelligence, you see. And one night he and his uniformed mates were at a dance down at the Lido Cabaret in Cottesloe. And so halfway through the evening, they walked across the road to the beachfront to get a bit of fresh air, just as the submarine surfaced. And the crew came up and they were sort of scattered around on the deck, obviously listening to the jazz music coming from the cabaret, which was floating out over the water. And he said, that's a Japanese submarine. And his mate said, "Oh, well, what are you talking?" He said, "Listen, I was raised in Japan. If anybody around here recognises a Japanese submarine, I do." Yeah. Now, at a dinner party a couple of years ago, I told that story. And I got to that point when a dear old lady across the table leapt up and said, "Yes!" Then she said, Jeffrey Bolton, who is a professor here from the university, she said he was in Tokyo a few years ago representing West Australia at a conference when an elderly Japanese gentleman sidled up to him and said, "Do they still play jazz music at that hall in Cottesloe Beach?"
Wow. That's unbelievable.
So you ask Michael about that tomorrow. He'll fill you in.
Yeah, full circle. So I love it when a story comes full circle.
Yes.
That's incredible.
And I thank Michael for that story.
Yeah.
Because it went over beautifully with my 7 allocated minutes, you know.
Okay. So your exhibitions.
Yeah.
There's going to be a permanent exhibition, isn't there?
I know, we keep changing.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I used to have the space downstairs. That's been redesigned. I did over 57 displays down there through the years, but they keep changing.
And how do people find out about them? Just through His Majesty's website?
Word gets round, and obviously they're here for the interval, you know. And I've always had a philosophy that I can't stand bland internationalism.
Mm-hmm.
If you want bland internationalism, ring Amazon and get the book. I do internationalism, but I always find a hook to link the topic or the artist or anything related to the exhibition. I find something that links it to the Perth experience.
So what have we got
and
now?
We found, well, the one that you can see from here, it is Claire Solly, who was big time down south near Margaret River, Katanning, during the First World War. She did First World War concerts and so forth. She came up here. She was doing work here in 1920, went over east. She was a mezzo and had a modest success abroad as well. The material has been recently donated by her family. So we're bringing her back to the Madge. It's an interesting story. Other displays over there, I have a makeup case of an actress who was active here in the 50s with all the old-fashioned grease paint. We don't use grease paint anymore, do we? Called slap, of course. because you slapped it on, and a selection of very interesting programs.
Well, I'll be going over there to have a look.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Mm.
But before we wrap everything up, I just wanted to ask you about hauntings, because I've heard that this theatre's haunted.
Well,
His Majesty.
we are determined that it is haunted. The story is for this generation. Old Eric Edgley, Michael's father. Every time people come down the corridor and there's a puff of wind, and the wind, they believe it's old Eric Edgley tapping them on the shoulder. I inherited a lot of Edgley material recently. Oh, that's something else to tell you about.
Mhm.
The Edgley family, as you know, they leased, then they owned the theatre in the 60s. They did something very, very bold at the height of the Cold War. Mick Edgley and his other son, Philip, they literally leapt the Iron Curtain and went into deepest, darkest USSR and started bringing out these fabulous performers, the Omsk Siberian dancers and the Georgian dancers and artists, the Kirov and the Bolshoi and so forth. And they began on that stage down there a tradition that continues to this day every time the Moscow Circus comes to town.
Wow.
So I might see if I can take you down. There's a showcase of their material, including the original Russian programs with their comments on book him for Perth, book her for Sydney, and I like to think of it as the beginning of soft diplomacy, as they call it now.
Absolutely.
And what is interesting here is they talk about the history. Well, the princess I adore, but that's the other thing. John Bell was recently, when was his last couple of years ago, we're in the Dress Circle bar after the show, and he said, you've got beautiful large foyers here. And I said, yeah, well, that's the luxury we had when it came to refurbishment. Unlike the Princess Theatre, which had some refurbishment at the time, very few theatres in Australia had the luxury of an adjoining hotel to expand into, because the other half of this place was His Majesty's Hotel.
Okay.
And that's been the clever part of the refurbishment, the way it seamlessly moved next.
Lives in. Wonderful. What's the next production on here?
We've got the festival coming in, and we've got the Mahabharata. And then downstairs in the cabaret room, we have the Fringe Festival. Oh, that's the other thing. About 5 years ago, the basement downstairs in the great long room, we set it up. The corridor, we put out posters and programs and photographs and lights and puppets, everything screaming at each other for no reason at all. And we curtained off the orchestral rehearsal room and created a comedy venue, stand-up comedy. And the audience, which was up to about 50, they had to be corralled at the stage door, and we brought them down there to there. And we called it the King's Lair. Get it? And so it was a huge success. And come the awards night, and we went to the awards, and there were all these cutting-edge 20-year-olds thinking they're absolutely the last word in creativity. And along came me. Who got the prize? I did.
Wow.
Spirit of Fringe, they called it.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
How wonderful is that? So you've written, you've directed, you've acted, you've curated. Where do you find your passion is, or do you think you have to be an all-rounder to be able to be in the position that you come to?
You have to be rounder. One feeds the other.
Mm-hmm.
One feeds the other. When you say writing, I been very limited, the opportunities, but I keep extensive diaries. And as I say, they're self-censoring in as much as the words that don't burn through the pages stay. But I've written columns and, and lyrics. That's why I love Stephen Sondheim, the wordplay of Stephen. But don't get me started there. Once you get a Sondheim freak going, there goes your evening. I was fortunate to do two of the great operettas, Die Fledermaus and Countess Maritza.
Mm-hmm.
And they're conventional 3-act operettas. And the convention is that Acts 1 and Act 2, the tenor and the soprano, they've played out their love interest. There's very little to say. They need a bit of a rest. So you open Act 3 with a zany character for a usually it's a valued old pro, and you've got these 5-minute cameos, and I played 2 of them. And it's the most exhilarating thing to be able to come on. The audience is out there primed, and you have to compress everything like a diamond almost into it, and get off. Don't wear out your welcome. And I played 2 of those roles, and particularly the Die Fledermaus one, I felt 5 minutes of absolute, can't do any better than that. So I knew I had it. The high as I as a performer could go was compressed into those 5 minutes. And it was 20 years ago now, and I can still talk about it. And afterwards, we were invited to give a speech at a statewide convention of Rotary clubs, you see, and I was the guest speaker. And I was introduced, and we've got our guest speaker today. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Ivan King, blah, 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 who's just had a huge success at His Majesty's Theatre in Die Fledermaus. Because I do believe in that old vaudeville maxim, always leave them wanting more.
Absolutely.
Or
and
as the musos say, 2 bars and off.
Yeah. And there's nothing like that feeling when you've got the audience in your hand and they go with you and you can take them and, like you said, you just got that feeling.
But I always finish my tours with that now. Say, well, blah, 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 always leave them wanting more. Thank you very much. And immediately get out the door.
So what's changed with performers from 30, 40 years ago to today? What do you see the major difference is?
It's the social media. Social media, it's good in so many ways, but it is diluting everything.
Yeah.
Cheaply, everything is brilliant or awesome now, It's losing its exclusivity. People used to come to you. Now you're supposed to be, and don't get me started on that, please. But there's so many benefits that, believe me, I mean, decent dressing rooms to start with.
Yeah.
And there's some gorgeous, gorgeous people that I know and love dearly. But technology's taking over.
Because I even talked to my children about what it was like for me growing up. If there was a song that you liked, you had to wait for it to come on the radio.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Now it's instant.
And you can
instant. Listen to it 20 times and then get sick of it and go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
They scroll through one thing and another. They watch 5 seconds of that and then move on to the next thing.
Yes, I've seen my great-nephews do exactly that.
And even fame. Fame is different these days because, there used to be 3 channels. And everybody would see something on television that night. Now it's really difficult to get somebody to see something, let alone see a stage show, because there's so many other.
Yeah. The other thing is it's the debasement of the language and the words. Nobody's don't take any note. They can't tell the difference between an actor and a celebrity, or can't even be bothered saying celebrity now. It's celeb. The celebs. And that's the other thing, the truncating of the language drives me insane.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no child can spell invitation because they never heard it. They hear invite.
Mm-hmm.
That's as far as it gets.
But there's no mystique when it comes to a star anymore. I'm very, very, very. I don't think there's going to be any more stars like there used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got probably Clint Eastwoods and people like that who are stars, but still, we know everything about Clint now, and you see him in interviews, and he's accessible.
Yeah.
Where, back in the day, a star was unreachable. Your Elvis Presleys, and you could never get to them. Your Beatles, and
Mystique is gone.
It's sad that that's gone. It's really sad that that's gone because, like you said, it's about leaving people with more. Yeah. And with social media, you've got so much.
You leave nothing to their imaginations.
Mm. Yep.
Yep. I've written a piece recently for a book that's going out here. I said, in theatre restaurant, we worked blue, but not too blue. We always believed that the minds out there in the audience were twice as dirty as ours on stage. We didn't ever use the F-bomb. There was no need. I can remember we did a send-up of Robin Hood, and I had the line, "Oh, have you met my good friend Friartuck?" Well, we could have gone off, had a cup of coffee and come back on, and they were still laughing. Yeah. But if I'd said the obvious, you had left them no work to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the woke generation has a lot to answer for.
Oh, yes, they do.
Some of the shows, and I was introducing my boys to some of the old English shows like Mind Your Language, Love Thy Neighbour. They're racist, or they actually weren't. It's all about the irony. And things like even Benny Hill. Benny Hill, he, like people say, he's filthy. Well, actually, it's a look. It's a look of the eye, and it's an insinuation. It's an inflection. It's actually art. It's clever. But I kind of find it sad that a lot of that's missing today from theatre, from comedy, from.
But it's the same backstage as well.
Mm.
Got an intimacy coordinator.
Yeah.
You've heard of those, haven't you?
Yes.
How the fuck did we survive?
It's the whole world is different now. I suppose it's like social media. You say that there's so many good things about social media. The thing I love about social media is the accessibility to things. The thing I hate about social media is the accessibility to things. So, it's heartbreaking, really, to see how people can get cancelled for having an opinion when, it's everybody's right to have an opinion.
And who is taking full advantage of this? The Donald Trumps of this world. They're just shoveling fodder towards them to make use of. Shoveling them at them. And the area where it's most dangerous is the total debasement and bastardization of racist. Because when you have a true case of racism, can't describe it because the language has been debased. The word means nothing now.
I know when I first came over here in the early 90s, all the young people couldn't get out of Perth quick enough.
Yes.
I know that a lot of them are coming back.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Now they're all coming back home.
Yeah.
And I've noticed so much difference in Perth from the first time I came.
So we need leaders.
Mm-hmm.
We need dynamic directors. We need a 6-pack of Armfields come over here. That's what we need. Musically, that criticism does not apply to West Australian Symphony Orchestra because they are doing wonders. The musical life, the classical musical life, is glorious. But of course, that's that, and this is that. That's my other criticism in one of my more binchy moments. I said the trouble with Perth art scene is that there is no cross-pollination.
Yeah.
Everybody's working their own silos, to use the contemporary expression. In fact, I said it's They're fully paid up members of the P brigade. My part, my play, my poem, my performance, my production, my painting, my piece of pottery, and piss off everything else.
Look, I am so thankful of the time that you've given me this afternoon. I've been wanting to catch up with you for a long time, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
I'm saving something for the memoirs.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Oh, wonderful. We can save it for session number 2 when I come back next time. Ivan King, thank you very, very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yarn About You is a Centre Stage creative production. Follow us on Facebook by searching Yarn About You, or visit yarnaboutyou.com.au for more information about the podcast and our guests.